All right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with someone that I have been a fan of for such a long time. You have heard me talk about his book, John Mark Comer. John Mark, thank you for being here.
Yeah, happy to chat. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so I got to start by telling you it's such a testimony story of how much I love your book. So I have a copy of your book that is mine. I read it. I'm rereading it. All of my listeners, viewers have heard me talk about it. I have cited it so many times. The title, in case you have lived in a cave and not heard me talk about this by some chance, it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's by John Mark Comer, and I get to sit down with him today. Okay, I have a million questions for you because clearly I'm a huge fan. You can tell may be an overcommitter by the fact that this book hit such a nerve with me. And so I just want to start with something super basic. Tell me why you wanted to write this book. Like, where did this start for you?
Oh, it started with pain. You know, the writer David Brooks has this great line about how he's always trying to write himself into a better life.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of truth in that for me, for sure. Yeah, it started with just the pain of, I think we're all trying to figure out how in the world do we follow Jesus or even just live a healthy human life in a world with an iPhone and Wi-Fi and busyness and all the insane stuff in culture right now. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the pastoral call is just to try to pioneer and navigate a way to live deeply in the kingdom of God with Jesus in this kind of a cultural moment. Yeah. And through my journey, I came to the conviction that hurry is one of the not talked about, but major issues, like the issue beneath all of so many of the other issues, and came to start experimenting with a different way of living in my own life. And the book was born out of that over many, many years of experimenting and failing and succeeding and failing again and learning along the way and discovering a whole kind of new way of living.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring that up because before I read this book, I would have never said my biggest problem is hurry, right? Like I would have thought I need more time, I need to be more efficient, more productive, I need to manage my schedule more, I need to multitask more, I need a different app, right? I need a different program. And the way that you unpack it in the beginning of the book, and certainly I love the backstory with John Ortberg and Dallas Willard and this quote, this really powerful quote of you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life, but how you unpack it. And one of the things that really stuck out to me and has affected me even to this day is think of yourself when you're in a hurry. Hurry has no time for love. Hurry has no time for patience. You are easily angered. You're short-tempered. You're irritated. And I think of myself, and when I'm in a hurry, I'm the worst version of myself. And that rocked my world because I thought, okay, my problem is not I need more time or I need to manage my schedule. My problem is I'm exactly what you say in this great quote by Dallas Willard. But if you can cut out hurry, it fixes so many of those issues that we experience that we may not realize are stemming from hurry.
Yes. And the irony is that, you know, the great myth is that hurry equals productivity. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't. Right. Often hurry will actually sabotage. If you say, but I want to live a meaningful life or I have a lot of responsibility, or often hurry will actually sabotage that, not aid it. Right. You know, Jesus was not a hurried person, yet he was deeply impactful in the world and did a lot of things. You know, there's that line in the Gospel of John, if all the things were written about Jesus, the world itself could not contain all the books. You know, of course, it's hyperbole, but, you know, he was deeply fruitful is New Testament language, not productive is American language, but without being hurried. Yeah. And so I think there's a myth that this kind of frenetic, go, pace, constant distraction, multitasking, doing too many things, overcommitting is somehow how you live a meaningful life. And I just think it is an absolute lie. Yeah.
You know, it's so interesting. I mentioned this, but since reading your book, and even since reading your book, I then went and read Soul Keeping by John Ortberg, and I've just been so fascinated with kind of pulling this thread of doing this work in my own life. But since reading your book, I make decisions differently when I put them through the filter of hurry. So if I've decided, which I have, I've decided, you know, even months ago, intentionally, I'm not going to hurry. As much as I can avoid it. With kids, with chaos, you sometimes have to, but as much as I can control it. So as a very practical example, a few weeks ago, I texted my girlfriend, Nikki, that I work out with all the time. She's one of my buddies. I was like, hey, you want to work out in the morning? And she said, yeah, come with me to spin at 7 a.m. Well, I was planning to work out at 5 because I go early so that I don't have to rush. And I was in my mind doing the calculation. If I go with her at 6, I could rush home at 7. I could take a really quick shower, get my makeup on, be out the door by 7:30. And everything in my mind was like, no, that would require me to hurry. So I'm not going to do that. So I was like, no, thanks. Enjoy your spin class. I'm going to go at 5. And I did. And I went on my own. I made a different decision because one decision required me to hurry and one didn't. And it's amazing how practical this application of this content in your book and your teaching can be. It really can change how you make decisions. And it's not that it didn't work out. It's not like, well, you need all this margin. You don't need to do anything. No, I still did what was important to me, but I made the decision differently because I chose one that wouldn't require me to hurry. And so it's just fascinating how this can have such a practical application. But I'm curious for you as the author, and this book has been out for a little while now, what did you learn about yourself in writing it? Because, I'm an author as well. Like writing a book is an experience. What did you learn about yourself, or what surprised you about the process of writing this book for you?
I think what surprised me is just how writing a book does not make it true of your life.
Yeah.
And how the enemy will kind of often come against us in our deepest places of calling from God. Or, you know what I mean? If there's areas in our life that God is targeting to form us, grow us, mature us, expand and enlarge us, the enemy is also targeting those same areas to deform us, sabotage us, ruin us. And so if, that point in my life is the speed at which I move through the world, there's a force, internal and external, that is trying to slow me down to the pace of love. And there is a force that is trying to speed me up to out of sync with love, And so I've just been learning a lot more on the back end of the book than through writing the book. The writing the book was a joyful experience of just kind of writing up all the things I've been learning over the years and experimenting and living into. That book was very much, in that season of my life, was very much like born out of my lifestyle. But then the book did really well. And so now there's like all these, possibilities and travel and, people wanting to talk and all this, that comes with it. And quickly got, out of the very rhythms that I was proposing in order to spread the message of the book, and realized, whoa, I had a couple months there where I got sucked into it and then realized, oh my goodness, this is like, it wasn't like blatant hypocrisy, like I was intentionally doing it. I was just getting sucked into the, it's the whole, I think it's Greg McKeown who talks about how success often ends up becoming failure for people. The very thing that made somebody successful, often then that success makes them a failure at the thing they did in the first place.
Right.
So I've learned a lot since the book came out about just how hard it is to live into those convictions, especially when things are going well. And so I'm learning a lot.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've heard someone say, similar to what you said at the beginning, that authors write the book they need to read. And that is so true for my life. I write the things that I'm struggling with and learn. And I think it's fascinating too, because it's great to your point, it's great accountability. The things that I write about or talk about or teach on life balance or being present with your kids or whatever those things are, in just the fact that I teach it, and it holds me accountable to live it, because you're immersed in that.
Yes.
And I could totally see how the success of the book, which is a good thing, that it's helping people, it's going to open all those doors that leads you into having to make those decisions of what you say yes to and what you say no to, which I was actually going to ask about that, because I first heard about your book from our pastor. I go to Church of the City here in Franklin, and our pastor, Darren Whitehead, talked about it. And he talked about it just such
I'm coming to visit you guys this September.
Oh, good. I will make sure that I'm there. But he had this, this raving review talking about it. And that's what made me want to go buy it. But as you talk to people, your book, a lot of books help people. Your book hit a nerve. Like, it hit a pain point. It's the reason people reread it a couple times and take it on the road with them all the time, everywhere they go. Like, what surprised you about that? Or what have you learned about that? Or what have you seen in terms of just, I'm sure, as an author, and I experienced this, you write something and you hope it helps people. And you write things that you believe in the content, but you have no idea until it's out in the world, out in the wild, how it's going to do. And we certainly have metrics of success, but gosh, the response to this book, even just from what I've heard and experienced from friends and community and coworkers, it is such a pain point. Talk a little bit about how you've experienced watching this connect with people.
Henry Nouwen, the writer, said what is most personal is most universal. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And the release of this book has surely been that experience. Like what was really personal to me, turns out was not just for me. It was a lot of other people that was my pain point. Turns out it was a lot of other people's pain point. Back to what you were saying, when I first came across that line from the philosopher Dallas Willard, who said, hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. And then he said, quote, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. When he first said, hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day, I was like, what?
Yeah.
If you were to ask me, I'm the same as you. Like, if you were to ask me prior to hearing that line, you were to ask me years ago, what's the greatest challenge? I mean, I live in one of the most secular, progressive, and at multiple levels dysfunctional cities in the Western world. Like I live on the edge of the map, literally. You were to ask me, like, what's the greatest challenge you face in following Jesus in Portland, Oregon, the city that is very hostile to Jesus at multiple levels, very progressive, uber secular, super hedonistic, very anarchist right now. What's the greatest challenge you face? I don't know what I would have said, but I don't think hurry would have even made it into the top 10, much less the number one.
Right.
But yet so my first reaction was like, what are you talking about? Hurry? And then I thought about it for a minute, and then it was like a tuning fork moment. I used to play music. I don't know if have you ever seen a tuning fork that people use like to tune guitars or pianos?
Yep.
If you're not familiar, that's like this little metal tuning fork. You hit it, and it's, a tuning fork is tuned to say middle C or a note. And if you know like music theory, middle C wasn't created by human beings. It's woven into the fabric of creation. God created middle C. It's just there. It's out. It's like gravity or E equals MC squared. It's just there.
Yeah.
And, when you hit a tuning fork, if you're close enough to it, you feel middle C like reverberate in your bones as your bones like come into contact with the reality that is middle C in the fabric of the universe. And I had this like tuning fork moment where it was just like a deep part of my soul just started to feel that tremor of, whoa, I'm coming into contact with a piece of truth that is deeply woven into the fabric of reality. That hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day, and you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And I just started to then realize that hurry was the root issue underneath so many of the symptomatic issues and problems of my life at multiple different levels, spiritual, emotional, relational, vocational, and started to live into it. And so that was a personal pain point for me. You put a book out, you're like, this really helped me. It seemed to help my church. Let's see if it helps some other people. And it turns out it did. So it turns out what is most personal is most universal, that for a lot of us, this is the pain point. This is the tuning fork. Wow, something is deeply off, and we have to radically reorient our lives.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's just, to your point, it is so in line with the truth. And you have such great example from Scripture and even Jesus's life, which seems so basic and simple. And you even talk about this in the book. But it's like, what else would we be trying to do other than live like Jesus? And you unpack this, but I have felt in my life when I'm listening to a speaker, for example, or whatever, they will say something, and it's the way you describe the tuning fork moment. It's like my spirit is in agreement. It's like everything in me is like, yes. And then I've had the opposite, where you're hearing someone that's super charismatic or super inspirational,
like,
and what they're saying, my spirit is like, no. And it's just amazing how we have the Holy Spirit in us that will agree, like, yes, this is in agreement and alignment with what God's truth is. And then it propels you into wanting to learn more and know more, even as when I dug into Soul Keeping by John Ortberg, and he talks about Dallas Willard, whose quote you start with, he talks about how he describes him as like a man almost incapable of hurry. Like everything about his pace, his tone, and I was fascinated by that. And I thought, I want to be like that. I'm so not like that.
Yes.
I talk fast. I walk fast.
Willard literally, when he died, on his refrigerator in his house, had like a 1-pager he'd written up on hurry with like definitions of hurry, scriptures about it, invitations to slow down. We must start today. So this was not just like an off the cuff comment that he said to John years ago. Like he literally died with this put up in front of him every single day. And he'd been living into this vision of, what Pete Scazzero calls a slow down spirituality for who knows how many decades. And yes, it had formed him. I never got the honor of meeting Willard, but it formed him by his reputation. And Ortberg is that way. Like when you're with John, I mean, he is just a delight. Oh my gosh, just so present, so unhurried, so calm, so wise, so contemplative, so thinks before he speaks, so in touch with both the grief of his life and the joy of the moment. I mean, it's just like, you're like in a presence of somebody whose body is moving through the world differently than your own.
Yeah.
And it is so compelling. That's who I want to be when I'm 60 something.
All right, y'all, I have some exciting news for those of you that have a business or want one. How do you use social media to actually build your business? Well, I'm so excited to tell you about a new partner called Comment Sold. They help you streamline the entire process of someone commenting on one of your posts, and they help you turn that fan into a customer seamlessly. You can get started with a free 30-day trial by going to commentsold.com/Christy Wright. When you do, you get a free ring light while supplies last, because y'all know we love some good lighting for our selfies. So go to commentsold.com/Christy Wright to get started. Now listen, I know that we're talking about some of the practical things that you can do to train yourself. And I loved how you just set the expectation up front. Like, it's gonna be hard. It's going to take a long time. Don't get discouraged because it's worth it. And so one of the things I would love to ask you just kind of as we wrap up, when you talk about this vision, I love how you walked through that, this vision. What is your vision for the impact that this makes? I know you've already seen some of it, since this book launched, but what do you hope people experience when they do this? What do you hope people gain from this? How do you hope their life is different as a result of eliminating hurry from their life in this practical training kind of way? What does that look like for you?
A friend of mine always says the meaning of life is relationships. And another way to say that is that the point of the spiritual journey, the whole meaning and purpose of the human existence is to become a person of love as defined by Jesus. Both receiving love from God and then giving love back to God and to those around us. And if that's the meaning of life, then hurry is the path that will take us away from the meaning of life.
Yeah.
And slowing down is the way of Jesus, is the straight and narrow way that will take. So not to sound cliche, but I hope that lots of people, myself included, become more loving and more present to relationships through and doing more productive, good work. I'm all for all that stuff too in the world. And, there's a process to it. If I'm careful to not overpromise and underdeliver. It is a long, hard journey. And often as you become aware of just how hurried you are, it can create a kind of neurosis because you start to realize, I'm hurried all of the time, So I think Greg McEwen has that line, there are two types of people in the world right now, those who are burned out and those who realize they're burned out.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's he's deliberately being provocative there. Not all people are burned out, but he talks about the odd psychology where often the people that feel the most burned out are actually people that might be actually more emotionally healthy, but they're just more in tune with their emotional lives. They're more in tune with their body. They're more aware. They have a higher value for being emotionally healthy and present and joyful and at peace. So actually they might be they might feel a little bit more neurotic, but they might actually be the ones that are further down the path.
Yeah.
I think the same with hurry. Once you have this category, once you start trying to live into these rhythms, once you realize how hard it is, it's often the opposite of what you expect. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm so hurried all the time. This is so hard. But it could actually mean that you're making progress. So there's whenever I teach on spiritual formation in our church, whenever possible, I use this simple graphic that's called the J curve, and it's from learning theorists. And they talk about, if you can imagine, it's hard to do with my hands, but if you can imagine like a graph that's shaped like a J that goes way down, bottoms out, and then goes back up and then past where it started.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of learning is. When you first start trying to learn a new skill, whether it is playing the piano or playing the guitar or painting or slowing your life down, you get worse before you get better.
Yeah.
So like as you try what they call deliberate practice, you actually just stumble all over yourself right and left. And you be like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's getting worse. It's getting harder. Every time I try to do this, it's worse. You know, like for people that intro Sabbath, I always talk about the J curve. You might kind of enjoy your day off, and then you decide, oh, a day off's not the same thing as a Sabbath. And you start to understand what a Sabbath is, and then you try to practice it. And the Sabbath might be a horrible day. Your first couple of Sabbaths might be weird and anxious. And you get in a fight with your spouse and things go terribly wrong. You're like, why am I doing this? I was having an okay day off before.
Right.
Now I'm having a bad Sabbath. That's the J curve. And people quit right before they hit rock bottom. You got to stay with it. Like any skill, you start to rebuild it. I remember, this is a music analogy, but I played guitar, for years. And when I first learned how to play guitars before YouTube, when you actually had to like learn from other people or take lessons or whatever, when I first started learning guitar, I learned wrong, as most people do, where if you're familiar with guitar, with the pick, when I was like trying to pick, a line or whatever, I would strum all down, like down every single time, down, 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 down. And actually proper technique is down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Long term, you can actually go way faster, make way less mistakes, and play better with proper technique, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, out. But it's kind of counterintuitive. You just kind of start doing all down. And so I remember when I learned that, I had to basically relearn how to pick. And I remember I'd progressed so far, and then I started trying to do everything down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And I got way worse.
Yeah.
And all these things that I could play pretty good before sounded horrible. And I sounded like an idiot. And I was blundering my way through. Because it's the J curve. I got worse, and then I eventually got back to where I was, and then I eventually doubled and got way better.
Yeah.
So that's how a lot of things work. So with hurry, it could be like, all right, vision, I want to live a slower, simpler life. I want to become a person of love. Intention, I'm going to take this moment. I'm going to decide. I'm going to make the sacrifices. Means, you lay out your practical, like, here's the things I'm going to do, whether the things in my book or your own things or whatever. And then stick with it. It's the J curve. You might get worse before you get better. It might take you a while to just get to back where you are now, but stay with it. It's a cumulative, it's compound interest. It'll do great stuff in you over a long time.
Yeah, I love that permission you gave us for people that are going to try this week or this month, and then they get frustrated because of exactly what you said. You're like, this is normal. You're going to get worse before you get better, but it will pay off and it will get even better.
Right.
John Mark, I have quoted your book to 1 million people on stages, on my show. I quote it in my new book coming out in September, Take Back Your Time. I love this book so much, and I think everybody should buy it, and everybody should read it, and everybody should do it. But for anybody watching, tell them where they can follow you on Instagram and get a copy of your book. And please also, while you're at it, tell us about your new book, because you have a new one coming out that I'm so excited about, but we just focused on this. But tell us about that one as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find online, johnmarkcomer.com, and JOHNMARK, pretty easy to do. I'm starting a new nonprofit called Practicing the Way at practicingtheway.org. We'll be releasing discipleship resources in the years to come. And I have a new book coming out. I just announced it last night. It's called Live No Lies. It's out in September. I've never worked harder on anything in my entire life. And I'll leave you with this one just teasing line. The psychologist David Benner once said, the problem is not so much that we tell lies, but that we live them. So the book is about that.
Oh, I cannot wait to read it. This has helped me so much, and I know that one will as well. John Mark, I know you are busy and have a lot of opportunities. Thanks so much. Thanks for taking some time with us, for being so present, and for teaching us. I really appreciate it.
You bet. See ya. Thank you for having me on.